In 1979, a pizza cook recorded one of the biggest songs in music history, using another rapper's rhyme book. In the Bronx, a teenager had tossed that notebook onto a pizza shop table. 6 months later, his own name was coming out of radios across America, spelled out, letter by letter, in another man's voice. He never saw a dime. The record sold 14 million copies. The rapper on it was a pizza cook who never wrote a rhyme in his life. And the woman who put it all together had her own name in the songwriting credits before the tape stopped rolling. They call her the mother of hip-hop. Grandmaster Flash sued her. Chic's Nile Rodgers nearly did. Her own artist fought her estate for 40 years. But here's what nobody tells you. Before she ever took a credit that wasn't hers, the industry spent 20 years taking hers. So depending on who tells the story, Sylvia Robinson was either hip-hop's first mogul or its first record executive villain. The truth is much more complicated. Let's start in 1957, because you cannot understand what Sylvia did in 1979 without watching what was done to her first. She's 21 years old. Her record, Love is Strange, is #1 on the R&B chart, 1 million copies sold, a guitar lick the whole country can hum. And on the label, where the writer's name goes, it says Ethel Smith. That's not her. That's not anybody in the studio. It's a borrowed name, Bo Diddley's wife, parked on the credit to dodge a publishing dispute between men who owned things. Sylvia is on national television playing a song that, on paper, belongs to someone who was never in the room. 4 years later, she does it again. She pays for the Ike and Tina Turner session, teaches Tina the melody herself, plays the guitar part with her own hands. "That's me playing guitar," she said decades later. The production credit went to the man who owned the label. Years on, she told Vanity Fair exactly what those decades taught her. "I made a lot of people a lot of millions, and I got jerked. I didn't get nothing." Burn that lesson in, because she did. In this business, the music is temporary. The paperwork is forever. 1973. Sylvia writes a slow, breathy record called Pillow Talk and offers it to Al Green. The preacher turns it down, too sinful. So the 37-year-old housewife from Inglewood, New Jersey, records it herself, moans and all. #1 R&B, #3 pop, a Grammy nomination. She and her husband Joe build a label of their own, all platinum records, real hits, real money. And then it all comes apart. Payola investigations, a tax conviction for Joe, lawsuits, bankruptcy. By the summer of 1979, the empire is rubble, and Sylvia Robinson is a broke 43-year-old coming home from a religious retreat, wondering if the music business is done with her. Then her nieces drag her to a family party. Harlem World, Lenox Avenue and 116th Street. On stage, a DJ named Lovebug Starsky is doing something with his voice, talking, rhyming, riding the beat, over the break of Chic's Good Times. And the room is losing its mind. Here's what mattered. No record of this sound existed. You could not walk into a store and buy what that room was feeling. She grabbed her sister Diane and said, "Imagine if they were rapping for the Lord." Understand, every record label in New York had heard rap by 1979. It had been living in the Bronx for 5 years. They all heard a party trick. A twice robbed, twice bankrupt 43-year-old woman heard a product. What happened next might be the fastest empire ever assembled. Sylvia needed rappers, and she found them in an afternoon. At a pizza shop in Inglewood, a big man named Henry Jackson was rapping along to a tape over the oven. Her son Joey would say he made the introduction. Other accounts say Sylvia heard him herself through the doorway. Either way, Hank auditioned in the family Oldsmobile at the curb, apron still on. 2 more strangers, Wonder Mike, Master G, rapped through the car window for their place in history. By evening, she had a group. She named them after her brand new label, the Sugar Hill Gang. One problem: Hank wasn't a rapper. He managed the pizza place. And he had a notebook that didn't belong to him. A Bronx legend named Grandmaster Flash tells the story himself. He asked me if he could borrow my rhyme book, so I just threw it on the table. In the studio, a house band replayed the Good Times groove live. Tape rolled for 15 unbroken minutes, one take. And Hank rapped Kaz's rhymes. He even kept the part where Kaz spells out his own name, Casanova. The record became the first rap song ever to crack the Hot 100, 14 million copies by most estimates, and never certified because Joe Robinson refused to pay the RIAA's membership dues. And the writing credits? The three rappers, and S. Robinson. Not Kaz, whose name is literally inside the song. Not Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards, whose bass line carries the whole record. Chic's lawyers called. The settlement made them, today, the only credited writers. The greatest launch in music history, built on 3 layers of borrowed goods. By 1982, Sylvia had the biggest group in rap, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and an idea nobody wanted. For months, she pushed them to make a record about real life, not the party, the projects, the broken glass. They refused. Party rappers don't do despair. So she made it anyway, with a house percussionist from Elizabeth, New Jersey, named Duke Booty, and the one member of the Furious Five who showed up, Melly Mel. Grandmaster Flash wasn't even in the building, but his name went on the sleeve because names sell. The record was the message. It became the most important song hip-hop has ever produced, the moment rap learned it could say something. And it carried Sylvia's fingerprints in both directions. The vision was hers. Even Flash admits she'd been asking for that record for months. And there, on the writing credits, one more time, Robinson. A year later, Flash sued the label for $5 million. The group split in half. The golden age of Sugar Hill was already ending. 1984. The label is cash short and getting out-hustled by a new generation. Def Jam, Profile, kids with clean books and major distribution. So Joe and Sylvia sign a deal they can't refuse. Pressing and distribution through MCA. Brokered by a middleman the trade papers would politely call a wise guy. No money up front. And the collateral on the table? The priceless Chess Records catalog. Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry, the crown jewels of Black American music. Federal investigators were already circling. A Columbia Records memo had once described the Robinsons, in writing, as the Black Mafia. That's Billboard's reporting, and it should be said plainly. The Robinsons went to court claiming they were the victims of that deal, that MCA and the middleman conspired to strip their assets. After 4 years of litigation, MCA settled. They kept Chess. Sylvia got her Sugar Hill masters back. But by 1986, the label was dead. The marriage went with it. And in 2002, the Inglewood studio where hip-hop's first hit was recorded burned to the ground, reportedly taking the original master tapes with it. September 2011. Ivory horses draw a casket through the streets of Inglewood, New Jersey. A send-off for royalty. 11 years later, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame calls her name. Sylvia Robinson, the original hip-hop mogul. The first woman ever to take the Ahmet Ertegun Award alone. In that very same summer, her old artists finally settled their 40-year fight over royalties, with the label her family still controlled. So which is she? The exploited pioneer, or the pioneering exploiter? Maybe that's the wrong question. She entered this business as a young Black woman, watching other people's names appear on the music she helped make. 20 years later, she was the one holding the paperwork. Sylvia Robinson didn't invent the music industry's game. She survived it long enough to get to the other side of the desk. And when hip-hop arrived, the paperwork followed. I made a lot of people a lot of millions, and I got jerked. She said that about the men who took her credits. Her artist spent 40 years saying it about her. That's not a contradiction. That's the business she survived, and the business she built. And her paperwork was only the beginning. I broke down the rest of hip-hop's contract story. The advances, the masters, the millions.